afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another video. In this video, I would like to discuss the findings of the Count of Monte Cristo, which is written by Alexandre Dumas, which is the son of Thomas Alexandre Dumas. Now you see, when you look at the Count of Monte Cristo, you then begin to see that all of Thomas Alexandre Dumas' life stories were then written by his son, Alexandre Dumas, in stories, novels. But these stories represented the true history of the Revolution of France. And when we look at now the history rewritten around Thomas Alexandre Dumas, which we begin to see that Napoleon specifically lied to the French people in order for himself to fulfill his own self-greed of wanting to conquer the world. Whereas we see Thomas Alexandre Dumas, a man of the clergy, a monarch, a man of God, who specifically was a man of the people, who believed in social programs and equality for those that were not seen as equal. And through this particular man was the liberation of France from the previous rulers, which his father was meant to then step into power. And beyond his father's death, Thomas Alexandre Dumas, who was now fighting wars for Napoleon and winning them for him, now that Napoleon had learned that Thomas Alexandre Dumas was to ascend to the throne of France, he had no choice but to create a sabotage, essentially. The hint that was left to the French people was in the battle for whom was supposed to rule the French Empire. It was said that the winner was wounded to their midsection, which now we know that Thomas Alexandre Dumas suffered a wound which infected, which he then had to press on his stomach in order to relieve the pressure of the infection for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, Napoleon Bonaparte used this tactic to say that the winner, him who he claimed to be, now he would hold his midsection for the rest of his life to make others believe he had stomach ulcers. But now you see, in the rise of Thomas Alexandre Dumas was a character arc. But we actively see that in his life, he encountered hell. Everything was taken from him. And just as in the book of Job, God gave him everything back. The book of Job is about a man who had everything taken away from him and then was rewarded with everything he could have never even imagined. But when you look now at the similarities between the story of not just the Count of Monte Cristo, the man in the iron mask, whom King Louis hid the true king on a prison on an island somewhere. Meanwhile, the real king, the brother, the false king, King Louis, was ascended to the throne. And in the Three Musketeers was the idea to create the true switch between the false king and the true king. In Alexandre Dumas, in his work, one can see a tremendous amount of depth in the points, you wish, because the beats of the story are so perfectly placed, it is absolutely thrilling to go along these particular tales. But these things are not fiction now. These are real written history, which we're beginning to see in this modern day and age, that the true leader of France was meant to be Thomas Alexandre Dumas, which means in his lineage is where the true king lies to this day. And now you see all of the other Dumas themselves are fighting over whom should be the monarch. Meanwhile, they themselves did not even figure out this particular tale. And out of greed, they themselves are begging to take power, because power begs for power. But understanding power, if you wish to take the throne as Annie Dumas, then I recommend you do it. But I hope you do the job well, because you have the entire world watching at this particular point. And in terms of the power invested in you, I would argue you're not driven by love, but rather by fear, driving your hatred for the fact you did not come to this realization until you were beyond the age of bearing children. Which means now there's only one true king. And so, to the people of France, votre roi veut vous parler. Ça fait trop de temps qu'on vit en mensonge. Vous pouvez voir dans votre civilisation les mensonges que le gouvernement français vous a donnés, qui vous a fait à manger mensonge après mensonge après mensonge, où maintenant vous pouvez voir la détérioration de la civilisation française. Et maintenant, même votre président Macron, qui connaît, qui n'est pas supposé d'être en pouvoir en France parce qu'il y a un roi que le peuple demande. Et qu'est-ce que ce roi veut pour le peuple français? La même chose qu'il veut pour tout le monde. Le retour de Dieu. Le retour de l'esprit dans le monde. De savoir l'amour. D'avoir des valeurs où nous savons qui nous sommes comme personnes. Où on n'est pas limité à notre potentiel. Mais alors, au peuple français, voulez-vous que votre roi retourne au siège de Versailles? Est-ce que vous voulez que votre roi retourne à guider l'esprit français, où on peut revoir la beauté gauloise, vous pouvez dire, les manières anciennes, où on peut retourner à vivre avec un esprit fort, où nous sommes fiers d'être qui nous sommes dans notre jardin. Au peuple français, merci pour m'écouter. Et j'espère que bientôt, la vie va changer. À la prochaine.